Hello, 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 and welcome to another Vibe coding session. Today, we are going to be diving in with John Jaffe, or as more affectionately known as JJ to me and his family. We go far back, probably about 3 weeks now. He's going to be joining me today from Builder, and we're going to be talking about a few different things. We're going to be talking about agents. We're going to be talking about AI, but mostly we're going to be talking about, Builder, its new release of Fusion, and how to use that alongside Netlify to deploy the Fusion application and also add in a couple of more features that really make the site shine. So my name is Demetrius Clark. I am a senior community engineer here at Netlify. Again, joined affectionately by one of my best friends in the world, JJ. JJ, please introduce yourself. Tell the people who you are.
I don't know if I can follow up on that. So I'm John on our solution engineering team here at Builder. So I typically work with companies who are looking to streamline how they build applications and how Builder's offerings can help with that. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. So, today, like I said, it's going to be a really kind of quick demo session. We have a demo for you all. We have a couple of slides just kind of dig into what Fusion is, Builder and such. And then we're going to kind of dig into a couple of questions. So first things first, a little bit of housekeeping. Up in the top right pane of your chat, you'll see there's a poll there. We're just looking to find out, gauge where you all are in your AI engineering journey. Have you vibe coded before? Is it something you're new to? Is it something you're experienced with? Check out that poll. Let us know. It'll help us kind of in the long run. And then feel free, while John is demoing, I'm going to be looking at the chat. If you have any questions, for me, for John, about the products, about AI engineering, about your journey, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that. And without further ado, I'm just going to pass it over to John. John's going to screen share. He's going to show off. We're going to do our build. We're going to do our demo while at the same time looking through some slides and chatting. So, John, take it away.
Cool. Thank you, John.
You're welcome, John.
Let's see. All right. So here we go. So today we're going to walk through Fusion, how we help companies build applications, generate web apps and UIs just via prompting, using your own applications, your own context, design system, and so forth, and how Netlify's MCP helps deploy those sites. So with that, I'll actually get started within Fusion itself. We'll start with a prompt, and then while that prompt's running, I'll give you more information kind of on what's going on, and then we'll get into the output within Fusion and how Netlify helps make these websites that we create live and deployed and managed. And so today we're going to, at its core, we're going to create a website and then deploy it on Netlify. And so let's see. So if we wanted to, I've been looking at buying a bicycle recently. And so if we wanted to say, maybe let's build a clone of Specialized.com, who's now getting some very valuable free publicity today, and deploy it to Netlify. Cool. Okay. So while this is running, this is going to take several minutes with the output, just kind of creating a whole website from scratch. It's kind of wild that you can do that, and then within a few minutes we'll have a website. But so you don't have to look at a loading screen for several minutes, I'm going to give you more information kind of on Builder, on Fusion, and how we work with Netlify to deploy applications, to build applications within Builder, within Fusion, and then make those live with Netlify. So really the idea behind Fusion and the purpose is that innovation is really no longer relegated to just development cycles. So anyone can build apps, anyone can iterate just with prototyping. So as we use Fusion ourselves here at Builder, and we've had PMs, designers, non-technical people make meaningful changes, contributions to our application just via prompts. And actually, as I say that, very importantly, changes are not deployed directly to production. So PRs get created from what you create in Builder so that with your regular review, your development process, and there's robust permissioning that you can put in place where you can do all of these really nuanced processes, output with Fusion, but balance that with putting the appropriate guardrails in place. really what we see as meaningfully different about Fusion and where we kind of hang our hat is Fusion's ability to learn from you. So not just generate throwaway code, but really build applications, build UIs that are intended to be used in production systems, and really write code as if one of your developers wrote it. And that's by us being able to ingest and learn from, for example, your Figma designs, your design system, your component library. Linked with that, so when we generate code, we're using your components, we're using the standards in which you build applications, in which you build components today, integrate with APIs, databases, and really Fusion is about generating quality code. Again, not just sort of ephemeral throwaways that's meant to be used in your production applications. And when we generate this code, we use Builder's powerful visual editor, which we'll get into in a second here, but allows you to visually interact and iterate with the application in addition to that prompting interface. So having this visual of what was outputted to be able to adjust, to tweak it in a visual way. And again, emphasizing that Fusion is really meant to integrate with your stack, your application. We, with Netlify's MCP server and MCP servers in general, are a big part of that kind of fitting into your workflow. With Netlify's being able to really offload the deployment of a website. So a cool, powerful, robust application that you build in Fusion, we can just tell Netlify to deploy that site, and Netlify will handle, by virtue of that MCP server, deploying that site, making that live. Netlify's server also has a bunch of other cool things that we'll get into today as well. Let's see. So a couple more slides just to give you full context on kind of Fusion, where we fit in. There are a lot of AI vibe coding tools out there, and I want to highlight what is distinct about Fusion and what really sets us apart. And really, it's the ability to connect with and learn from your application. So your design system, your components, how you build apps, and have that inform the code that Fusion generates for you. It's the visual editing interface, so a Figma-like interface for your code. And whereas in Figma, you have that visual editor, you're editing design suggestions that can then be used in an application. Fusion, you have that visual editor for your actual code. And the last piece here is really just enterprise level architecture competence. Namely, we're not pushing any code changes directly to production. We're going and meant to slot into your review process, your deployment process, and again, with roles and permissionings to be able to put guardrails in place over all the cool stuff that you can do with Fusion. Last slide here, I promise. Oops, sorry, Dom, go ahead.
No, I just said, heck yeah. I'm just hyping you up. That's my favorite thing to do.
Love that. Need a hype man. Okay. We'll talk about full time later. So last slide here. This is the overall architecture of Fusion and Netlify together. So on the left is all of that context that you give to Fusion, that Fusion learns from to create high fidelity applications, code generation from your code base, reference code bases, design systems, bringing in designs directly from Figma, mapping to your components, MCP connections, so like Netlify that we'll show here today, and then importing from web. So today we're building a clone of specialized.com or something that's inspired by that. So all of this on the left is all the context that you're able to give to Fusion, so that when you generate code, it does so really in the way that you'd want to build it by hand. Fusion, like the iteration process, is in the middle here, where you have the visual editor, the prompting interface, to be able to adjust and tweak and build on those outputs that Fusion generates. And then on the right is, what Fusion gives you. So PRs, code that you can then deploy into your application, MCP servers like with Netlify, so deploying that application for you. Overall, just making what you create in Fusion actionable by however you want to take that code, essentially. Cool. Yeah. Okay. There we go. So within here, so it went through this whole process. Fusion did. I gave it that initial prompt when we started, as far as build a clone of specialized.com and deploy it to Netlify. And so what's really cool is it gives you the kind of streaming or thought process, if you will, as far as what it needs to do to fulfill that prompt that you gave it. So I gave it that very vague prompt. I just said create a clone of the website, and so it derived that it needed to create the header, the navigation, search bar, all these different parts of the application here, and then so it built that out, has this running checklist. So as it goes through, it's going to create these actual components as part of the application. So this was, all that it did here to get started as far as building this out. And so it did kind of this to-do list. And then here, now we're able to look at the ultimate output. So once it goes through building all of those different components, here's what that looks like within Fusion. And then, so right now it's towards the end. And when it's done building this initial prompt, it will leverage Netlify's MCP server to say, this cool thing that I just built, actually make this live and for people to be able to view on a Netlify managed website.
Could I jump in with a quick question?
As a hype man, I would expect nothing less.
So when you are interacting with the agent in the left pane there, is that agent also able to kind of converse and communicate with you beyond just the generated output?
In what way?
So a thing I really like to do is I'm working on projects, and typically I'm working out, of an IDE, a code editor. But I know a lot of folks here are, I see over here in the pane that there's about 10 people who voted that they've never vibe coded before, 26 of them who have dabbled a bit. And so, for me, this is just a suggestion for folks that are out there doing it. I love to, when I have an agent who does all of this work, who goes and makes these checklists and gives me this really good kind of breakdown of the decision process that they made. I love when I can go and say, hey, generate me a markdown file that describes the kind of decisions that you've made here above and in a way that I can consume. And so could I have it kind of output? Could I converse with it and say, hey, really appreciate all of this information. Can I put this in a digestible markdown file that I could copy and paste out with? Is that something that the AI agent inside of Builder is able to handle, or is this more of a direct to generation style agent?
It is. So it's generating UIs, generating visual, but also all the back end, the business logic to make this possible. So it can do that, and that's actually a really cool idea. So so with Fusion, it gives you kind of this stream of consciousness as it builds out the site. But you could do something that's really cool with Fusion specifically, is that we have this custom instructions here where you can give context to the model as far as what you want the defaults for code generation to be. So what we see customers use for this a lot, and you can do this directly in your repo as well, not just in the UI, but you can have a builder rules file. But here customers will put, here you can put a markdown of components, like how your components are built, what your standards should be for the code that gets generated. You can also do make sure it generates unit tests or things like that. You could certainly, with the output from Fusion, you could say, hey, when you actually generate this code and put this into a repo, also create a markdown file that goes through how you thought about it, how you solve these problems.
It's so nice to do that too, because what it does is, a lot of the time, even when you're working with expensive, really well performing agents, sometimes they lose the early context of what created the project, right? Like when you get down into the bugs or finding pieces that may not have been built how you would have expected them to be, it's really hard for the agent to wrap back around and think about, okay, I made these decisions because of this. That my fault. I'll go and do this. It's really nice to have these. And it's also if you ever work with somebody else or you put down the project for a bit and come back, it's so nice to have that early on thought process that created the project in the first place to allow you to go, okay, well, maybe I gave it a too small of a prompt. Let me give it a little bit more detail, based around these features. So that's really cool. I'm glad that that's something that I imagined it could do. I've watched Steve, the CEO of Builder. I've watched his live stream so many times that I know that man beats up on agents and really cares about the outputs and how to kind of maneuver the weird space that we're in, where we have 1,005, different agents, and all of them kind of interact similarly, but there's like very key niche pieces of each agent that make a difference in the things that you're building. And I think, one of the things that I've just seen from Steve, and I know can be found inside of the product of Builder, is like that really linear and thoughtful process of making sure that the output that we're getting and that is being generated is something that would match kind of the experience that you would get, i.e. having these like contextual files right inside of this UI. So very cool to hear. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a big part of how we envision it, and really the value that we aim to provide to customers is, I mean, there's a lot of tools that will generate code for you, but the big thing is the fidelity of the output, making sure it's generating in the way that you want it, and that's not just the actual code
This
itself.
also looks like very unique. Like I would say that a lot of the time that I actually put up a tweet recently asking like, who knows of something that actually outputs like the non-cookie cutter design that I'm really looking for when I start up a website. I think a lot of the data that these agents get trained on, it makes sense why a lot of things start to look the same. We all operate around standards, and a lot of the design libraries that exist operate around similar but differentiating standards. But you start to get that kind of feel of like, okay, well, everything kind of looks very similar. And I think obviously this is a copy of a website that already exists, but I think it did a really good job at looking very unique in comparison to, I think, a lot of the outputs that we see generated nowadays.
For sure. Yeah. And like, let's say Specialized was a customer who was using Fusion. When it generates things, we're able, again, to look at their design system, how they build, so that when you build, let's say they build a new hero or something like that, the hero itself is new, but then they have atomic components within that, the cards, the buttons, different things like that, that Builder will by default use. So it's really meant to integrate into existing applications. Certainly it can build new, as we did here, but integrate into existing applications and really slot into how you build and just streamline that process without requiring you to reinvent the wheel. So with your components, with your context, like I had a couple apps recently that I built. One used types, the other one used interfaces, and Fusion looks at how I built those applications when it generates new from my prompts and informs the code that it gets generated. So it is really, I think that's like definitely a core part of the overall workflow, is making sure that it generates with what you'd expect as a customer as far as how you build things today by hand, but then also with things like custom instructions, all the context you can give it to make that as high fidelity as it can as far as how you expect specifically that code to be generated on an ongoing basis.
Awesome. Heck yeah. ×3.
Cool. Okay. So, all right. So we created this site. So it went through here. What's also really cool, like I find it very helpful to go through that to-do list as it does it. So you can see, how it's thinking about solving this problem. Is it using state? Is it using data from somewhere else? Like kind of overall what goes into the code that it's generating. But then at the end, you get this nice summary of what it built. So here's all the things that it did, taken from that task list up there, including the last step, so deploying to Netlify. So I just put in that prompt, the last part was deploy to Netlify. So with the MCP server, with that tool, we're able to deploy this to this live site here, and it looks pretty good. We're missing some images that we have to fill in, but overall looking pretty good here. And it built out all of these different components. And this is the visual editor. So like if I wanted to, adjust this, tweak this in any way, in addition to that prompting, we have this editor here. We can make those different adjustments, feed in Figma designs, what have you, as part of this, in addition to just the prompting.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think what this kind of activates, especially for folks in the audience that are still getting their head around, like, when do I have to learn the code? Like when do I have to put myself into a position where I have to, one of our ambassadors actually had this idea of like the just-in-time learner, who, up into a point doesn't need to understand what a serverless function is or how it operates, But eventually when it breaks or when you need to add some custom logic, you know, you get to the point where you're like, okay, let me go and, you know, Google this serverless function. What is a serverless function? How does it operate? What's an API? How does it operate? I think this is a phenomenal layer kind of in between that allows the non-technical folks and the technical, but really the non-technical folks to harness the power of an agent next to visually crafting the experience that they are looking for, which I think is really powerful.
I think that's a really interesting point too, is like, it's important to know, like, say you build this and it's not exactly what you want, or you need to tweak it, which is the expected workflow. Like, we're not saying, oh, you build this site.
AI does not one shot very many things just yet.
AI, do this thing real good. Like a big part, and really why I think it's helpful to look at how it builds and what files it's building and so forth, is because the next steps when I want to iterate on this, it allows me to be even more prescriptive with my prompt to say, you know, you built this out using this sort of function or something like that, and I want to adjust it to do this. So just having that understanding of the overall application, and then we do have the code view in here where you can actually see the code that got generated here, but being able to kind of understand what went into the code that it generated, not just the output, but, you know, it used Tailwind, it built with these sort of constructs to then say, as you do your iterations, knowing how it was built to allow you to be more informed in essentially asking it to iterate on that.
Very cool.
Cool. Okay, so we deployed this site, we created it, we deployed it with Netlify's MCP server. Netlify's MCP server is not just for deploying applications, which, you know, we have this cool one here that's now visible on this URL here. So in my Netlify app, I have this new specialized clone that was done with that MCP server connection. And so in addition to that, one thing that I think is really cool with the MCP server is Netlify Forms. So being able to have forms on the site and then integrate those into the Netlify instance as well. And so I'll say here, create a contact us form below the hero, and let's say hook it up, if I can type, Netlify Forms. Cool. And so this one will be a lot quicker because it's not creating a whole website, just creating one specific section there. But this is that streaming process where it's saying, you know, here was my prompt, here's what I'm going to do for the requester, the person who prompted that in. And so this is like that step-by-step process. So in this one, it's not a bunch of different things. It's just creating that form, and then with the MCP server, connecting that to Netlify itself.
We've got a couple of questions here that I think I can summarize in a single question. How does Builder Fusion, the agent in which Fusion is using, how does it create and generate the action of like APIs and actually reaching beyond the static? Is that something that Fusion and Builder handles, or is that something that you wait until you generate the output?
Yeah, so Fusion handles that. So not just the front end, but the actual behavior under the hood. So you can integrate with different APIs. Like you can just provide a URL endpoint, and it's can define the JSON from that. You can give it the JSON, like a sample output. In addition to that, they can be like public APIs. You can do a web search on how APIs work, and then just do that with a prompt without you having to be overly dogmatic about it. And then certainly internally,
and then MCPs would enable, I think, a pretty fair amount of API integration as well inside of your Fusion chat, I would assume, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like, I think of MCPs as the new age APIs. So MCPs
as AI APIs, basically. Yeah.
There's a lot of acronyms out there, Dom. So yeah, so being able to connect different services. So like these are some common ones as far as different systems that we connect with that are out of the box, and then you can have custom servers, your own MCPs that you connect to do operations outside of Fusion in other applications, and just, you know, raw regular APIs as well. with providing that documentation, providing the API itself to Fusion, and then letting Fusion run wild. So it is very much a full-fledged, create the UI, but under the hood of the UI, the quick handler, the different things like that. And we'll see with this contact us form that we're creating, like it's not just the visual of the form, but we're using Netlify server MCP connection to actually have that, like the quick handler
That
of
wire.
that form. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll let you get back to it. I will say we got a ton of questions that we can hit after the demo is done. I would love to get through the demo, get people seeing kind of the full output of this demo. But people are really interested in like Fusion and how it operates in comparison to a lot of these other products that are out there. And then also kind of it looks like some questions about like what's the agent powering Fusion. So we'll don't worry, everybody. I see the questions on the Q&A pane here. I see you all in the chat. We will definitely get to those. We'll have probably about good 15 to 20 minutes or so at the end where we'll just go back and forth and hit a lot of these questions. But I wanted to make sure you all knew you were heard. John, I am going to stop interrupting you. I promise.
No.
It is your stage now. You go ahead and do your thing. Sorry about that.
No. So this is actually taking a little bit longer. This might be my internet actually, but if we want to jump to a couple of questions now, we absolutely can.
Let's do that. I think some of the folks in the chat, and then I see over here. Do we know are we okay with announcing the agent behind Fusion currently? Is there multiple different agents you can choose from, and is it a single agent that Fusion chooses? What does that look like?
So it's Fusion is built to be kind of agnostic to model, just allowing us to slot in whatever works best. What works best tends to be, Claude Sonnet 4 specifically. So
Yep.
That's kind of the default, but it's not like if there's another great model that ends up serving our customers better, like we have the ability to switch to that. It tends to be Sonnet 4 at the moment, just in terms of consistent quality of the output, recognizing patterns that we see. We're also rolling out the ability for customers to use their own LLM. So
Awesome.
As opposed to an off the shelf, something that's internal to your company
Business,
that you can use
yeah.
as the
Can you show quickly, like, so you said you can choose different models. Is that something inside of the UI?
So that, like right now we build it so that we prescribe the model. We build
Cool.
it in terms of like we can choose different model
Sure,
as far
sure.
as what best serves our customers, and then in here you'll be able to
I see.
use custom models as part of our enterprise plan. Roll your own as opposed to one of the off the shelf.
No, I think it's fair to. I think in this situation, most people should be choosing Claude. I think at this point, anyway, I think it's one of the better outputs that we're seeing. At least currently, things change constantly. But yeah, I think that was a solid. I feel like that answers some folks. I just saw a question come in. How do we make the app be data driven with a product like Supabase, or I guess really if we zoom back out, like kind of having a database connection to make sure that we're able to kind of test these things in a more real, because I know earlier you had mentioned this kind of allows us to get into an environment pre-production. And for, again, folks that are out there that aren't, super technologically kind of advanced or understanding kind of how like the different Git branchings and environments work. Basically, it allows you to, before you go live with, especially when you're deployed on Netlify, we have this idea of deploy previews, which allow you to make changes that don't affect your production site, which is where your URL is hosted. We give you a different URL, which will allow you to kind of test these changes in a production style environment without having to go live with it. And so what does that look like kind of from the Fusion perspective?
As far as like building things out in a safe environment?
Well, as far as like being able to attach your website to a database and start to build within those environments.
Yeah. So you can connect your own internal APIs. We have a Supabase integration that we actually just released recently, where that's the kind of the data part of it. So Fusion, I would say, like by default, AI is inherently deterministic, but one thing that seems to be pretty determinable, if that's not a word, we're making it one, is like by default it will use dummy data, just because if you're not overly prescriptive as far as how you want that to be built, it will just kind of put in placeholders for that. So then you can customize that. You can integrate Supabase, you can integrate your own APIs, your own databases into Fusion itself, so into your repo, that's connected to Fusion, where then by default, and this really speaks to us learning from how you build your application, when you have a database in there, Fusion's smart enough to use your database as opposed to dummy data. So dummy data is just like, right now I created this thing quick and dirty live here, but then when you actually have data in your application, you have a Supabase connection, Fusion will use that to have that be data driven, not just the UIs, but the actual underlying business logic, the connection to data as well.
What if I wanted to write my own APIs or have something that isn't attached directly to something that Fusion currently supports out of the box? What does that look like currently?
Yeah, so you can connect your own custom MCP server within, that is the wrong button. Within here, you can connect your own server. This is for an actual MCP connection, but you can also, like for just regular APIs, this is the MCP. For regular APIs, you can just give Fusion like a markdown file. You can say, here's the URL, here's how it works, here's a sample output or something like that. And then when you give that the instructions, so that was like this builder rules thing here, these custom instructions, you would do this in a markdown file, this API that's somewhere else, not actually in the application, but we want to access that. You just, essentially you give Fusion the instructions and then it goes and digs where you tell it to dig.
Yeah, because again, really at the end of the day, like Fusion, and I think what a lot of, again, maybe newcomers are still learning is that at the end of the day, a lot of these platforms that you're using, a lot of these IDEs and things that are kind of wrapped around the idea of building have a custom set of instructions that Builder maintains that allows it to, it enforces different structures to Claude in this case, Claude 4, to build in these specific ways. But at the end of the day, when you peel everything back, again, you're just working with Claude, right? So I think a lot of folks are seeing the platform and thinking, okay, what box am I being put into by using the platform? The platform itself, to me, and again, I'm also new to Fusion and Builder as a whole. I've known about Builder for a long time, but seeing all the new AI integrations, I haven't gotten to play with them yet. But from me and my perspective, what I see is a really great way to get your project started, moving, and pushed into a position where if you needed to, you can move off platform and go into your own your favorite editor or what have you. But realistically, when you're inside of this kind of visual based editor, you're able to still connect to the things that, that's actually in the middle of this. That's a good question. If I were to move this off platform to an IDE, and make changes, push up to the GitHub repo and etc. What does that look like on Fusion's end? Does it realize those changes, and does it have access to the code that you write, over in your own editor? What does that experience look like?
Yeah, so it's definitely what we see, how we use Fusion internally, how our customers use Fusion. We're not replacing all code editing, all IDE. It's typically, we like roughly half and half is in Fusion, and then in Cursor
Sure.
or whatever IDE. So we like when you take from Fusion, we also have a VS Code extension where you can run this editor directly in your IDE. So you have Fusion within the place you write code. But we are like, we're just giving you the code, and then you can use that code however you'd like. And then, you in practice, you create a repo, you do, PRs in here, PRs directly from your IDE, really wherever that code's getting generated, then just syncing that to your application as it exists without saying, all deploys have to happen in Fusion or something like that. Again, internally, and then with our customers, you'll do a lot of stuff in Fusion, but I use Cursor as well for a good amount of stuff. And so it's a mix, like you can take this, you can run this directly in Cursor, and then have those PRs, whether they're from Fusion or from Cursor, they all slot into your application, however you build it, wherever that specific change comes from.
I think this really pushes the idea for folks that maybe haven't worked in a technical environment, such as like inside of a team at a company. I think this is a really interesting opportunity for companies where, I think I saw someone mention, when would I move this into a CMS or what does that look like? I think this is the kind of evolution of what a CMS maybe thought it was going to be when it was ideated, like the original idea of a content management system. This kind of gives even less technical folks who maybe, are your marketing team or working outside of your code writing teams, to get in and look to generate changes that maybe your engineering team doesn't have the time to do at that very second, right? Like marketing moves quick. As we all know, it hits, and when it hits, you have to get it done. And I think what tools like Builder and Builder specifically with this tool Fusion allows you to do is that even once you've moved off platform, say your engineers are working within their favorite IDE and they're making these large swath changes that they want to have a little bit more control over, being able to go back and also have the visual editing piece of being able to, I don't have to continue to prompt my agent or work the digits of padding or of placement inside of the of the hero section. Like it really puts it into a position where you're the same power of being able to visually see that in Figma, but live and on the site that you are using and directly accessible. So I think for folks that are trying to understand kind of where this fits into the full process, if you are on technical teams and you're like, well, why, maybe I would use this to spin up a project, but I don't know what I would do with it, once you're out of that, I think this really gives your entire team access to a marketing site that you are working on in a way that allows you to collaborate more closely to how you would typically work. Instead of sometimes, when you work with a marketing team and you're the engineering team, you're at a position where you have to find a really unique way to grab all of the needs that this person has for this upcoming landing page or this new page on the site, and be able to say, hey, like here's the link to our Fusion, sign in and come and show me exactly what you think it should look like inside of this hero, and you can just drag the content around and rewrite like copy, like live instead of in a box. Then you have to go through publishing it, then you have to wait for the publish to hit, and then you can see it live, and then it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be, so you have to go through the process again. Like this eliminates all of that kind of like frictioned process that I think starts to be generated between teams as they try to work on things actively. So to me, that's I think one of the powers of using a tool like this in your process. And if you're not on a team and you're just vibe coding a new project for yourself, this also puts you into a position to be able to do exactly the same with yourself and not have to go through so many back and forths and use so much credits. I think that's another thing that, a lot of folks now are probably running into the wall of, I'm trying to describe the thing I want, but it's such a small change and that I can't seem to get the agent to really understand the thing that I'm asking for. Being able to do that visually and not have to worry about like using credits to fail, which I think is a thing that happens, pretty often. I think being able to do this right inside of a visual editor empowers you away from seeing a lot more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. So we started as a visual CMS, drag and drop, being able to use your own components as content. That's phenomenal for marketing teams. We have a large number of large customers that use Builder in that fashion solely, where we're creating marketing pages, landing pages, different things like that, and being able to use this drag and drop editor with your components to build out that content. Where Fusion really slots in is when you want to have a lot more scope of what can be visually edited. So when you're in our CMS, you're visually editing the content. When you're in Fusion, as you pointed out, you're visually editing the code. So like you want to iterate on this application. Like we've had, I made a PR to Fusion, a couple actually. I don't want to brag, Dom, that's not my style. But being able to, there you go. So being able to really iterate on the code of the application, do that with prompting, do that in an intuitive way. But then, as you pointed out, like, when I just want to make minute tweaks, I want to get rid of something on this page, you can do a prompt, but you're wasting credits. And also, like, it's easier just to visually do it. So I think that's where this design tab comes in a lot for customers, being able to do the visual editing in addition to that prompting.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting piece that I'll ask. I don't think I've seen much of it in the chat yet. What does credit usage look like on the Fusion platform? Like, how do we track that? Is that something that is only available on the pro plan? What does that get you? Like, what does that process look like when utilizing credits with Fusion?
Sure. So it's similar, like nuances with specific platforms, but in general, how other AI companies price as far as with credits. So maybe as a lead behind, I'll link to our pricing where people can learn more information on what the pricing is and also what goes into that as far as what are credits, different nuances and things like that.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, it'll be a good. I think the pricing page and understanding like what that looks like, and because I think now it's really interesting, and I think folks, you should utilize this. Find an area in which you can, like, a lot of the time folks maybe have one subscription, they can only pay for one subscription, but there are great chat apps out there. I personally, I use the T3 chat app, $20 a month. Also, another really good one is the Raycast AI. I utilize those tools simply to generate really good prompts to utilize inside of the tools that generate the code. And what that allows you to do is really push yourself to, utilize less credits on the platforms that you really need to have your credits be the most useful for. And waste is going to be a bad word for it, but I can't think of a better one. And waste the credits trying to generate the idea with another platform and bring it into Fusion. I believe T3 and Raycast also have free amount of chats that you can do, but it really helps when working with platforms like Fusion, who obviously, like, I think folks need to understand, right? Like, they are eating a lot of the cost up front of you using these credits because it's their API keys, right? And so a lot of these businesses will, have to kind of price themselves based on a way of like, okay, we have to utilize these really great agents that end up costing at high token usage, but utilize it in a way that is going to allow the operator to really utilize these credits in a useful way. And so I think starting to think about how you spread that process across platforms and really utilize the platform's credits as optimally as you can, it's such a good resource for learning.
Absolutely. All right. So coming back to this contact us page, so we asked it to create a contact us below the hero and add this to Netlify forms. And what's really cool here is when Fusion builds, again, we learn from your code, your themes, different things like that. So even this basic application that I just built, when it built this contact us, it didn't just build it with random themes, it built it with the themes of this application. So specialized red, white, and black, how they have their themes, their topography, different things like that. So it just builds with your codes. Wherever we can leverage your components, your standards, your themes for how you build things, we incorporate that into the code that we generate, because again, our goal is for you to take this code, iterate on this code, and use this code in production, not like, throwaway sort of thing. And to do that, it needs to be high fidelity with how you want to build it, with your components, with your design system, your standards, different things like that. So let's see if this form actually works. All right. So I bet the person who has John Smith at Google has resisted considerable overtures to sell that email over time. Okay, so what is the error here? So this is also, I might not have hooked up the form properly, but Fusion client can see server errors. So there, the form didn't submit, and so it will actually debug for us, and actually does that proactively as well. Like there were a couple here where the form wasn't rendering properly, so it looks at screenshots. Like it will proactively, as part of the code generated, do error handling or do debugging to see what it can fix about that. And then when it had that error with the form, it gave me that button. So afterwards, I can just come in here and we'll see. So in the debugging, it's the problem is how the form data is being encoded. So it is connecting with Netlify to see how this should function. This form should function, and now it's making sure everything works as it should. And at the end, John Smith will be able to submit his issue to Specialized Bikes.
I've got a pretty on point question here. How many credits were used to clone the specialized.com website? Is that something that you as the user can actively track as this is moving, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so that was actually just one credit. So again, our pricing page has a lot more information on what goes into that, but that prompt, that specific one, and that's definitely not recommended, by the way. Like in practice, you're going to say, build me this component, build me this part, and really iterative prompts. But that one to just create that specialized site, that was one credit.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that also hits on another question that somebody had asked is like, what does the process typically look like when you're not utilizing a kind of like an example like you did there, right? Like where you were able to give the agent the ability to go and see another website and make the clone of it. What is the typical process when you don't do that? Is that something that you would say is the more iterative approach of saying, okay, hey, again, this goes maybe back to what I said of like going and finding the prompt that is going to work best for you that really helps you break down like what is the beginning of your website needing to look like when you don't have an example to utilize?
Yeah, so that is that iterative approach where in the main projects tab, you can either create that new. So the first thing that we did on this call was we did that prompt in the box on the projects tab. So you can do that, or what's more common for customers in brownfield applications is you can connect a repo. So from any Git provider, really, GitHub, Bitbucket, you can connect that repo, and then we slot into the application with no additional configuration that you have to do. Just tell us what the commands are as far as running the server and so forth. But with that, so with just connecting that repo, then you have your existing application that's then fusionized. That one, Dom, we're not going to make a word out of. We're just using that one on this call.
Now, fusionize is for sure becoming a word, and I will be using it in the tweet on the follow-up.
I hope so. So in that scenario, and that's what we see, like a lot of our customers, certainly you'll create, like some customers will be creating new applications. They have new initiatives they want to build from scratch, but very, very commonly it's connecting repos. So you have this existing application, you have this, app, e-commerce, what have you. And you connect that into Fusion. And then when you're in Fusion, you're doing iteration on that already existing application. So building out new functionality, and the real kicker with using connecting a repo like that is Fusion learns from everything that's in that repo, other code bases that you've told us to look at for reference. So then when we're building things in that iterative process from step one, we're using all your components, your themes, different things like that as the default for Fusion code generation.
Cool. I actually answered, I think, one of the questions in Q&A of like, what does it look like when you need to when Fusion needs to understand more of like what the other files in your project look like and how to make sure that it stays standard to like a design system and things like that. So that's awesome. Another quick question that I had here, and I know you said, go to the pricing page. It's going to be a lot more descriptive, but Fusion versus Publish, like what does that look like and what should the folks know about what that is?
Sure. So Publish is our CMS product. So it's the same visual editor that you see here, but just dragging and dropping content onto a page. So in your application, you've created a way for people to visually edit the page. So a WYSIWYG, drag components onto the page as content, then you publish that content out. So let's see. So within the visual editor for Publish, that's where it's content. So essentially anything that shouldn't be a PR, like Fusion can do everything, but really in practice, do you want a marketing site every time you update copy on a marketing site to dictate having to do a pull request? So that's where we see Publish being a big part of sort of visual here. Here we go. So you can drag and drop. Zapier is a great customer of ours. They use a bunch of really interesting scenarios. But so you can drag and drop this content onto the page, make changes to your pages, create new pages, different things like that. And then that's all published to your site via API. So there's
Okay.
no code change, there's no pull request. Publish is really for marketing teams to be able to create experiences, create pages, edit pages, do all that in the visual editor, and then have that content be pulled into your application via API. So not necessitating code changes. Again, like I use Fusion all the time, but there are things that you don't want to, that shouldn't be pull requests. So copy changes, different things like that. That's where Publish is really coming into play as the overall kind of traditional headless CMS. And Fusion is the same visual editor, but as opposed to really just the content, Fusion is you're visually editing the actual code. So you're updating new functionality, you're adding, new behavior, incorporating APIs, different things like that. Fusion is the visual editor for the actual application code itself.
And so you would say that, like, all in all, it really zoom out and understand that it's one platform usable in different ways. And I think that's,
Yes.
I think folks are maybe not seeing that, like, it's not a choice that you have to make. It's what operations you need to make in the moment and how you would choose to use the platform in that way.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a cohesive platform, and then kind of picking the best tool of Fusion or Publish, depending on the different scenario that you have at your company. We also just released an MCP server within Fusion, Builder Publish MCP server within Fusion, to be able to say, I'm within
To
Fusion,
work
I want to
accurately
create some
across them.
content. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Right. Yep.
Awesome. And so you do see folks utilizing both Fusion and Publish, in certain scenarios.
Yes, absolutely. So Publish is that CMS that's for your marketing team, your creative team,
Like
to use the
truly
platform.
content-based editing.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And Fusion
Cool.
is for your PMs, your engineers, your designers to come in and actually edit the actual website itself.
Sure.
But a
Yeah,
large
so you're
part of your
separating content and active development in a way that allows them to work similarly, and you can utilize kind of similar strengths across the two, but really operating individually and saying, okay, if you need to make content changes, it is here. If you need to make web changes, it is here.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Cool. Heck yeah.
I knew there was a reason I had you as my hype man.
That's all I'm here for. We got 8 minutes left. I'm unsure is it still building?
No, it's done. So
we're done. Great.
Remember, we had that error with the form, and I just pressed that attempt error. I didn't do any debugging whatsoever. Fusion did all of that for me.
We were able to have a full conversation while this did all the work. We love that.
Fusion is not Fusion can't be used for conversations yet. I think we're getting there though.
Don't tell me that you're going to put me in front of AI JJ and never talk to me again. I think that's what you're telling me right now.
I don't think AI can handle this. All right. All right, there's still an error, so something needs to be done there. So do some different debugging, but that's overall the idea. You connect that form with Netlify's MCP server, and then all of those submissions come in, and they come into your Netlify form.
Yeah, and I'm imagining what Fusion is doing is also generating the endpoints, like the APIs needed to submit the form and make, the actions of like sending to an email and or a phone number and kind of generating the output that you would expect when you move into an IDE to be able to see those APIs.
Exactly. Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Well, wow. It's funny. Me and JJ had talked a few days ago of like, he was like, hey, like this demo is going to be like 10 to 15 minutes. I just want to let you know so we don't, we don't lose the time. And I was like, listen, we're going to find so much ways to fill this hour. You're going to be shocked by the end how little we have left to actually engage more of the questions. So we've got 5 minutes left while this is still fixing and debugging. I wanted to just bring up really quickly that thank you all for coming out, listening to us ramble, listening to us chat about Fusion, Builder, APIs, Netlify, AI, like such a great time. JJ, thank you so much for putting this all together and being here to answer my 5,000,001 questions and being here for the chat. Real quickly, just let you all know, I answered this already, but folks may have come in afterwards. This recording will be available afterwards. It'll be sent to the email that you've registered with, so just keep your eye on that. It has to process and we still have to send it out, but it'll happen afterwards, probably within the next week or so. Other than that, upcoming August 13th and 20th, we'll be having 2 more vibe coding sessions with some of the solutions engineers from Netlify, Sean M. and Anil. They'll be coming in, doing some chatting, doing some vibe coding, engaging with y'all and answering some of your questions more about the Netlify platform and any questions that you might have there. Thank you again for coming, being so interactive. Like, it's so much easier as a host when you have a audience who is so captivated and wanting to learn and had all the questions that you all had. Thank you so much for being engaged. Like, makes my job so much easier, makes JJ's job so much easier, because now we don't have to think of anything creative to do on our own. Really, we just lean on you for all of the content. So thank you so much. JJ, I want to give you a couple minutes to kind of finish out, give your spiel and anything you wanted to chat about. So JJ, again, the floor is yours.
Sure. So thank you for having me. Really enjoyed this conversation and kind of waxing poetic about Fusion and what can be done with the Netlify connection as well. Definitely encourage everyone on the call to test out Fusion. So we have the ability to do that directly from our website. So test it out. Let us know what you build. Let us know what you run into. But yeah, very exciting time for Fusion, being able to build out web apps and UIs for our customers and give it a shot.
Yeah, I think, one of the things maybe the community is wondering is if they do have questions or they do run into any issues or they're really excited to share the projects that they work on, where would they go? Do you guys have a community? Do you expect them to be on like X or Blue Sky? Like, what does that look like, and how do they get in contact with your community and company?
Yes, so we have forums. We have a very active support channel, so support widgets in the application as well. So anything that you run into, anything with Fusion, any questions about Builder in general as well, that support channel is key playing point in that sort of thing. If your company ends up evaluating Fusion and wants to see how it would fit in as far as your overall workflows, you'll very likely talk to me or somebody like me on our solution engineering team. So we are here to help as well.
Awesome. JJ, again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for your time. And to everybody else, I see you all, still have some questions. I know there's a ton of Q&A over in the left pane here. I didn't get to all of your questions, but I did try and summarize a lot of the themes that I was seeing into the questions that I had. But if you still have questions, if there's anything that you didn't get an answer to and you're, really curious, or you're in your journey and you're just looking for someone to chat with, I'll make myself available. You can find me mostly on X is where I spend a lot of my time. Feel free to reach out. Feel free to ask your questions. I'm happy to get back to you and maybe follow up with John afterwards with some of the questions that you all have and get some answers from him. Again, thank you all so much for coming out. We really appreciate you all and the time that you spend here. I know it's a Thursday. It's a work day for a lot of you. So taking time out of your schedule to come and hang with us is so awesome. And we really appreciate it. We got about 3 minutes left. So I think I'm going to close it here. I think I'm going to close it out here. Again, thank you so much, JJ. Had a great time with you. So glad we got to meet. So glad we got to have our time together. Thank you again for putting together this demo and really knocking it out of the park. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks everyone.
See y'all. Have a great day.